I'd like to just jump over to what happens to a group when they really hit fame and success. What happened to Lennon?
He got very excited about it.
I'll bet.
Yeah, there were very exciting days. The growth of the Beatles themselves, you know, as they spread, their fame spread throughout the world. It was an incredibly exciting time for them. They enjoyed it thoroughly to a point, and then when they realized that they were becoming like the puppets of the people, in other words, this is something that they didn't like. They suddenly realized that the price of fame is the erosion of freedom. Most people tend to think that to be rich and famous gives you more freedom, but it works in the reverse process, and especially when you get to the status that John and the other Beatles got to, you become a captive of your own homes or whatever you have. You can't pop down the road to the pub or around to the corner shop like you and I can do, or at least like I can do. And so there were the drawbacks to having the fame, and I think that they became aware of this very quickly after they had really hit the big time.
He got into a very heavy experience with drugs. And what seemed to be a search for identity or some piece. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it was you know, I'd hate to influence anybody about drugs in any way, but of course, in order to give the full picture of John that I felt had to be done, it was necessary to cover every aspect of John, even the controversial parts. I think drugs, in a way, was, to John, who I can only speak for myself, something that when you are more or less a hermit, which he had become, to have something which gives you a new experience. This is probably one of the main reasons why drugs appealed.
I want to talk a little bit about the women in his life, because there's a real difference in terms of women. Let's talk for a minute about his first wife. Why did he marry at a relatively young age?
Well, it was the normal process that came from the north of England, or England in general, really. I mean, in the late 50s, we had a very chauvinistic society in which everybody, I mean, the word chauvinistic didn't even exist in those days. It was just a way of everybody followed on from the parents' examples and the examples of people that we lived with. And you had the normal trait. You met a girl, you got engaged eventually after a while, and then if the girl became pregnant, you did the manly thing and you had to marry her, you know. And it was just a process like that. They lived a very, what I would call, normal type of British type of married life.
Julian, his son, who's a carbon copy of him, at least in the photos that I've seen, did he have a father? I mean, was John
Sure,
Lennon's
he had
father
a
at that
father
point?
within the limitations that I've just explained, insofar as he'd go to school, he'd come home, he'd have tea with Daddy, he'd go to bed. It was like a routine type of thing, more or less.
I'm kind of curious, in England, being married, did that take away from the appeal of the Beatles?
Surprisingly not. They kept it secret for quite a long time after John had got married, thinking that this could destroy all the, you know, the reaction of the fans. But this was the first time, because they'd done it before with people who had reached stardom and kept it secret they were married, and so they followed this process. But when it was actually revealed, the reaction was amazing. It didn't seem to make any difference at all.
Well, what about the fact that that was his marriage, but then he met a woman who ended up being an extraordinary presence in his life? How did he first meet Yoko Ono?
Well, he first met her at an art exhibition she was giving, and they both sussed out that what she was basically doing was sending up the art world and enjoying the reaction that she got from it. And they met a few times. They met at a TM meeting, Transcendental Meditation meeting, but nothing had really happened until a particular night that I was staying at John's house. I'd been staying with him for months, and we'd been up all the previous nights. I was ready to crash out. John could stay up 2-3 nights on the run. And he said to me about 10 o'clock at night, "Do you mind if I get a girl over?" And when he told me it was Yoko, I was most surprised. I said, "Oh, I didn't realise you fancied her." And he said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "There's something about her I like. But, you know, while the wife's away, I may as well find out what it is." So she came over and we spent half an hour chatting, right? And then I went to bed. Next morning I got up early for me, 8 o'clock, and John was in the little room off the kitchen. And I thought that he'd got up early, and he astounded me. He said he'd been up all night and that Yoko was still upstairs, and just something in his tone of voice made me realise that there was something, because I said, you know, "Oh, have a good night then, you know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink." And he didn't react. He was flat about it. He just said, "Yeah, it was great, Pete." And then I sat down and he said, "Pete, this is what I've been waiting for all of my life."
Wow.
He said, I don't care about the Beatles, I don't care about the money, the fame. He said, I'll go and live in a tent with her if I have to. You know, that was the impact that Yoko had.
Let's take a look at one of their first public appearances together. We have a picture of Yoko and John, and I guess the obvious question is, what was there, or is there about Yoko Ono that a man would make a statement like that?
That a man would
make a statement like, I'll go and live in a tent. I don't care about the Beatles, I don't care about money, I don't care about fame, I don't care about power, I want this woman.
Well, what makes anybody fall in love with another person? I mean, I wouldn't have fallen in love with Yoko Ono, but John Lennon did. I think what appealed to him about her was the fact that he'd met a strong, intelligent woman who had the same type of humor that he had.
Humor. We have a picture of them in terms of one of their more humorous scenes. I mean, many of us will remember that the bed-in. I mean, they did some strange things together.
Well, you see, they were able to make very valid points, but they were having a great time as well. I mean, John said to me after the bed-in thing, he said, who else could go to bed for a week, Pete, and people would come in and stick microphones in your face and come in and photograph you, say, what's going on, what's going on? And so you've got to realise that although he was making valid points about things, he was still enjoying himself and having a lot of fun. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, you don't get too fanatical about anything. It doesn't matter how good it is or what it is.
Just one more thing about her. You know, there's the suggestion that she became the powerhouse and the shaping force in his life. Is that true?
I think it was a give and take situation, actually. I think that they were both two strong, intelligent people who had totally fallen in love with each other, and as with John anyway, he would give a lot of latitude to people who were close to him and encouragement. And it says a lot for Yoko, actually, for the fact that she was able to retain her identity and her individuality, because she was ostracized by the great majority of the population, and not only by the population, but people who were close to him as well.
Was she responsible, as been reported, for the breakup of the Beatles?
She wasn't directly responsible, although the responsibility came through her insofar as John had changed his priorities, and he was letting everybody know that fact, that it was now John and Yoko. He'd still play with the Beatles and all the rest of it, right? But from now on it was John and Yoko. So he was going to take her everywhere with him. And of course this caused a lot of unrest and unease amongst a group of guys who'd been basically chauvinistic, who didn't allow girls into the recording studio. And so it was a wedge that was driven in. But she was basically just the door that opened. John had been searching for a long time for new directions for his creativity.
Let's take a look at one last picture of Yoko and John together shortly before his death, because that'll come up right here. How did you find out about his death?
Somebody phoned me early in the morning of the 9th, and I was in bed. Fortunately, it was somebody very close to me who told me. And it was fortunate because I would have been up in another 5 or 10 minutes, and my automatic thing would have been to switch the radio on. To have heard it like that would have just been totaled me, you know. To have had it broken as I mean, it was bad enough hearing like that, but at least it was broken gently to me on the telephone. I covered that period very, very briefly in the book. I've used just half a page to describe what happened to me on that day. I went up to George's house. We talked for a while. Ringo phoned from New York. There were some musicians arriving for a session that George has already arranged. And I said to George, well, are you going to carry on with the session? He said, well, what else can we do? We've just got to get on with it, Pete. So I covered it very, very briefly in the book, because I think it's important that we don't dwell on John's death, but we remember his life, because it was truly fantastic.
Mm-hmm. There have been a number of exposés, I know you're aware of them, we talked about it briefly, that have come out after his death. Why did you write
For this
book?
particular reason, actually. I saw the type of people and the type of book and the type of article that was being written, and I also knew the type of person who'd been contracted to write books on John. And although I never got involved in any way, we always kept our relationship very personal. He used to say to me all the time, Pete, for God's sake, will you please make as much money as you can out of knowing me? And I always used to refuse. I didn't want to inhibit our relationship at all. But when I saw what was happening after his death, I thought the time has come when I've got to put it down on record as it actually was. Not a glossed over picture, not a picture painted by a friend, a pretty picture of John Lennon, but all the facts in to get rid of all the rumour, the speculation, and all the rest of it. The full picture is there, John Lennon, and as he was, John Lennon, take me or leave me.